evening, everyone. So excited that you've joined us this evening. This is Parent Supporting Parent, and we're happy to have Vicky Clark and our entourage of men who will be talking about from boys to men. I'm glad you're here. There is a blessing in store for you, but I'm hoping there's going to be more than just a blessing because this is a discussion we need to be having. And I'm hoping that not only is there a blessing, but there is an education as well. And so thank you for joining us. Right now, hit that share button. Bring your friends on because they need to get this too. Pray with me. Father, we invite your Holy Spirit to come and to direct what we do and to say this evening. Thank you, Lord, for those who will have this discussion. We recognize that more than ever, we as people of color need to support and to affirm each other, especially as we grow our boys from boys to men. So direct us now, we pray, in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Again, hit that share button and get your friends on the line. Here now is Vicky Clark. Vicky, you're alive.
Thank you so much, Pastor Williamson. Thank you for being so supportive of this initiative. We launched this initiative, Parents Supporting Parents, last week as we talked about self-care for parents, because we know as parents, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't take care of our children, grandchildren, loved ones, or anybody else. So I am so grateful. I'm excited tonight to be talking about the topic that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And I have invited some colleagues, some friends, some brothers from other mothers here tonight. We're going to be having a discussion, and I'm so honored to be having this discussion with these men who are fathers. And so tonight we're going to be talking about from boys to men, raising Black boys. In 2021, what does that mean, raising Black boys? And so they're going to have a very transparent conversation about their own growing up with their father, or maybe without, and then talk about how that influenced them to raise their own sons. So as we did last week, I'm going to have them introduce themselves because they're the expert on who they are. And so I'm going to ask you to just share your name, just brief background, because that's not really what we're here to talk about. More importantly, your role as a father. How many sons do you have? And if you have any grandchildren, how many grandchildren? And here's the bonus question in your introduction. Did you grow up with your father? So that's how we're going to start. And I'm going to turn it over to the gentleman in the blue hat. Who are you?
Right, wonderful. I wore the blue hat so that I could be easily recognized. Brother Kelvin X Lovejoy. I was not born here in Hartford, but I was raised here in Hartford by a single mom. I have been working in youth, family, and community development for 30 years. I am very much passionate about this topic, and I look forward to our discussion this evening. Thank you.
Sons, grandsons?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, actually 2 sons, 18-year-old, 31-year-old, and 2 grandsons, 7 months and 9.
Thank you so much. And the gentleman with the white shirt on, he looks very familiar.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Max Ferguson. I am a pastor and I am a chaplain also. I am also a husband and a father of 2 young adult sons, 22 and 26. I lived for over 17 years in North Central Connecticut, so I'm very familiar with that neck of the woods. And I grew up with my father for the first 14 years of my life. My parents were divorced when I was about 14, and that helped to frame some of my relationship with my father. My father is now deceased, and I am honored to be part of your conversation this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Max. And Warren, I think you are it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Warren Hardy. I was born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. I have 3 sons. My oldest is 27, the middle one is 10, and the youngest is 7. My dad was in my life, even though we never lived in the same household. But one of the key things that he installed in me is quality over quantity. And that is something that I will go into more as we have this discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, my friends and my brothers. So here's the very first question. Someone said that it's difficult to be what you don't see. And so how does that relate to what you were exposed to growing up as far as modeling fatherhood? How does that relate? What challenges did it present? And then what did you resolve to do as a result of that? So Max, we're going to start with you with that. It's difficult to be what you don't see.
I would agree in general that is true, because we tend to replicate what we have seen. But I would also like to respectfully suggest that even though it's difficult to be what you don't see, it's not impossible, because you can also decide that what you've seen you don't want to replicate. And so when I was growing up, I never saw my dad helping my mom. I never saw my dad doing a lot of things. And I saw the impact that had on my mom, because if you're in a 2-parent family and the wife is taking care of children and taking care of the home, etc., and there is very little time for self-care, it's very easy for the relationship between mom and dad to deteriorate and sometimes disappear. There is no place for romance and all of those other things. And so if it's to be balanced, and I would say the relationship between mom and dad is the basis for the relationship between a father and his children. And so for me, when I saw what happened with my mom, and I decided I don't want to replicate that in my family when I have a family. And so the things that I do as a father and as a husband, I never saw my father doing those things. So you can learn, you can say, I don't want to replicate. Yes, it's difficult, but I don't want to replicate it. So I'm going to find something else, a better way, and I will not carry the cycle on. And I made that decision when I was 15.
Whoa.
Before I ever thought about getting married or ever had the idea of having children.
So you were very intentional.
Yeah.
Very intentional. Kelvin, I have to pose that question to you since you didn't grow up with your father. Again, it's difficult to be what you don't see. Talk to us about that. What challenges does that present?
It's difficult to be what you don't see. When I think about that statement, it's very easy to be what you do see. And, pretty much what I saw in the environment of urban Hartford was, single parent households for the most part. We saw boys coming to manhood very sparsely connected to their fathers. We saw a lot of womanizing. We saw a lot of violence. We saw the disproportionate weight that mother had to carry. And so from the start, not having a father, but I had a strong mother. And she raised me with the principles of her father, being my grandfather. And those principles were constantly reinforced and reiterated in the household, but he was not seen. Thus, I carried the wisdom that she told me, but the reality, the day to day, was what I experienced amongst my peers. And so I didn't necessarily have that example of you know, what to see. It was always kind of a question mark for me. When I tell my story to my students, I say that I saw my father 7 times in my life. The 7th time that I saw him, he was in a casket. And so I didn't have a real framework for manhood or fatherhood necessarily. And so, like many boys and young men who come up like myself, I collected father figures. And so, you know, I had a few men who came in and out of my life, and I took a bit from here and a bit from there, and I made a composite figure, if you will, of what a man should be.
Okay, excellent. I like that phrase. I collected father figures. I like that. Warren, how would you add to that?
I would add to that by saying the question in itself speaks volumes in regards to difficult to be what you can't see. So to me, that's insinuating that in a perfect world, that you actually have a dad that's doing the right things and is an example of how you are to become, you know what I'm saying, as you grow up. You know, unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. Unfortunately, we don't have those role models, those positive. We don't have the dad there to lead us the way we would want to be. So, to piggyback off of what Brother Lovejoy said, it is the community responsibility to understand the importance of that particular statement. And because life, whether by design or whether by natural causes, is not perfect, and every dad is not going to be there, that is obvious cry out for help. Like Brother Lovejoy said, he had to find that father figure in other men, and other, whether it was an uncle, whether it was a guy that lived next door, whether it was a big brother. He had to kind of like, you know, pull from these individuals, you know, and thank God that, you know what I'm saying, they were there, and he was able to pull a foundation strong enough that allowed him to be where he is today, because that's how important it is. It's very difficult to be somebody that you don't see, which means that as a community, as a whole, we recognize that every father, again, either by design, due to prison or death or sickness, right? Or either by design or just natural causes, just unfortunately not there, that we play that father role and view all sons as our own sons. And, you know what I'm saying, provide that guidance to them.
Okay, so I'm hearing this global village then. You know,
Yes.
they're all our children. That's what I'm hearing
Yes.
from you. Okay. So listen,
Exactly.
this is the $1 million question. Is it different raising a Black boy versus raising a white boy, Asian boy, you know, you name it? Is it different raising a Black boy? And if your answer is yes, tell me why. Anybody can jump in.
A Black boy in America deals with a different reality than any other boy. Well, brown boys, Black and brown boys in America deals with a totally different reality, because of racism and prejudice and the history of this country. There are some things that Black boys must deal with that no other that the white boy would not have to deal with in his lifetime, and we deal with it from the time that child is born or hits the classroom. A teacher may be prejudicial against that kid just because of his color and his background, etc. And so yes, it's different. And I think as I was thinking about this question, I thought it was also important to say this because Hartford has the second highest immigrant West Indian population after New York City. And I thought that this was relevant. And this is a challenge of immigrant parents as it relates to Black boys and Black children in general. But we're talking about boys right now. Many immigrant parents make the mistake of raising their children as if they're still in their home country, wherever that country is. And what can happen is that boy grows up being a person without a country because he doesn't really belong to that place. He's never raised with understanding what it means to be a Black person in America. And so he grows up not belonging to any place in particular, and that is dangerous for the young man and for the Black community in general.
You know, I never looked at it from that perspective. Thank you for actually sharing that with us. Is it different, Brother Lovejoy?
Definitely, Ms. Clark. As I bring myself back here, I was just looking up something. It's totally different. I mean, ever since the soles of our ancestors' feet hit this land, we have been under attack. And we have been under attack solely for our appearance and solely for what we mean to the world, what we mean to a white dominated society. We have to teach our sons about survival, and that survival is different. When again, you are 13%, if you will, of the population here in America, when continuously we see that at every turn, folks who look like the gentlemen that are on this screen are under attack. And they're under attack. We are under attack in all arenas, And so it is a very sophisticated game of survival that our sons must be taught.
So I heard you talk about we have to be very intentional. I heard Max talk about how this starts at a very early age. There's a pastor in Atlanta who just did a PSA for Black parents, and it was basically having the talk. Like if you get stopped by a police officer, you know, and he was walking through the steps, and everybody, he had children on there, he had adults on there giving this message. And each one ended up by saying, remember, the goal is to get home safely. Remember, the goal is to get home safely. Do you think that he was just over exaggerating by doing this PSA? Is that talk necessary? Are you having that talk? Did you have that talk with your children? Warren, I'm going to ask you that question. That talk, is that necessary?
Unfortunately, it is necessary due to the fact that America as a whole have yet to take accountability for the way they have treated Black people in general, that disease has, spread throughout America, and we have officers and other, white people still not viewing Black people as human beings. The system has designed traps for us to fall into so that they could have reason to come in, shoot, first and ask questions later. And I think as a black child growing up, you need to be aware of these traps, because if you're not, and again, if you fall into the trap of selling drugs, of doing something illegal, and sometimes you don't even have to be doing something illegal. Again, back to the fact that America has not taken responsibility for the way that black men and black women have been treated. Again, you can just be innocent and still get targeted. So the conversation is a must on, son, it's important that you be safe when you go out. And I'll just end it there.
So you're talking about something that I'm going to actually go to right now. You're talking about the involvement with the law. And so, as you know, in Hartford, there's been a spike in gun violence. And we just got off of a meeting where law enforcement officials were having conversations with young men. And if you look at the statistics, it says on the average, 85% of children who grow up without their fathers have some kind of negative behavior or some kind of involvement with the law in one way, shape, or form. My question to you is, and we're talking about the perpetrators of ones who have the guns and the ones who are the victims. Most of them are young Black men that we're finding right here, Black and brown men. Why do you think this is? Because I'm saying young men, but are they men? Is there a difference between, between, what is the difference between a boy and a man? And are these individuals men yet who are killing people and killing each other and things like that? So that's a loaded question. I've asked a lot of questions. Kelvin, jump in, please, first, and to answer that question.
Yes, ma'am. So it is loaded, and because of the type of work that especially Warren and I do every day, we probably wrestle with this more than anyone else, Ms. Clark. But I would say that I have to help my young men understand that they are young men. That's number one. That there is a difference between a male and a man. And then we go into that. And I also help them to understand about the transition from boyhood into manhood and how in other cultures, they usher in their boys into manhood with a large ceremony and there is a designation that this young one is now coming into manhood, and that usually starts around age 12. And from that time there forward, they are recognized as men. Unfortunately, in our community and in our culture in general, we don't have the rites of passage that ushers a boy into manhood. And so with that said, you can find, 25, 35, 45-year-old boys. And that, where physically they have matured, if you will, into a man state, again, on a physical level, but psychologically, mentally, and spiritually, they are stunted. And so I'll leave it there for the other brothers as well.
Max, what do you have to say about that? You're muted.
Yes, there is a difference between a boy and a man. And I do concur that when we were taken from our ancestral homes, that we lost a lot of the cultural things that like rites of passage. But I want to digress one moment to go back to your previous question, because I think that the conversation that we talk about that we need to have with our young men need to begin before they start stepping out. That conversation should be an ongoing conversation as soon as they're able to understand certain things. So they need to be familiar. They're living in an era that is well past the civil rights era. One of the things that I did with my boys when they were growing up, they sat down and watched I Am the Prize, and they were informed and educated, and that helped them to understand that Black young men and Black men are looked at differently, and here's the reason why. Here's the history, and you are part of this history now, and this is what needs to inform how you carry yourself and how you present yourself. And so back to your question, it's a process of moving from childhood to manhood. And there ought to be, I went to a HBCU in Huntsville, Alabama, and there was a sign on the wall that says, what you are to be, you are now becoming. And so a father of young Black men need to understand, or a parent of young Black men need to understand that all along the continuum, you should be planting the seeds that will ultimately get that young man to be the young man that you want him to become, and will be able to function effectively in the society. And I want to reiterate what some of my other brothers said. It takes a village, because the truth is many of our families don't have two-parent families. And the truth is also, a woman can never teach a boy how to become a man. And so he needs male influences in his life, and it has to be an intentional thing that needs to happen.
So you actually, we're going to segue into that, what you just said. A woman cannot teach a boy how to be a man. Because, and so ladies, if you're listening, I need you to listen to this even more so, okay? With open mind and open heart, because would you agree, gentlemen who are part of this discussion, that single women have raised Black boys who are successful? Would you agree that that has occurred? President Obama is one of them, right?
No doubt.
Now, but what I heard you say, Max, is that there are some things that a woman cannot do, even the most exceptional mom cannot do when it comes to helping that boy transition from childhood to manhood. That's what I heard you say. Is that correct?
Correct.
I need you to speak to that. I need you to speak to that, Max. I need you to speak to that, Warren. I need you to speak to that, Kelvin. What are some of those things?
Can I follow up?
First.
Yes.
Can I follow up on that question that they just answered?
Yes.
Real quick.
Yes.
I think first and foremost, for us and for those that are watching, it is imperative, right, that we see this current situation as a life and death situation. It is imperative that we understand that we are a target, right? So the question about the young, the question about the young men that we're dealing with in our community, and the question that we first answered is, it being difficult for them to be what they can't see. We have to understand that, by design, it's like that. It's like that by design. So if you don't know that, it's by design, and you just think that your father just happened to be missing for, no real reason, then that messes up, the important information that needs to be passed down from generation to generation. Because again, this did not just start yesterday. Fathers have been missing, for one reason or another, by the trap that's been laid for them, right? And if you don't understand that, it's hard for you to give that information to your son, currently. You have to look at it as a life and death situation, because other than that, you're going to be nonchalant in your delivery, and your son is going to think, whoa, okay, it's not that serious, and then go out there, do everything right, get pulled over, and possibly get killed. So we have to understand that there's not this did not just start yesterday. There's a system that's designed to remove the father out of the house, so that there isn't a positive role model, because that benefits the system, and the powers that be, hence the overcrowded jails, that we deal with.
So, ladies, hold on, because we're going to get to that question about what a man, the role is to transition that boy into manhood. Some people have said that what you're doing is you're taking that young boy's childhood away by being so intentional and putting in all this reality. And, what would you say to that?
I would say that it's necessary, and don't underestimate the power of what our kids can comprehend. So I believe one of the things that I stated earlier, it's about quality, not quantity. So you may deliver this life and death information, but you can deliver it in a way where it's not taking their childhood away, but educating them that even as a young kid, as we've seen, on the news, even as a young kid with a fake gun, how that can get you killed, right? This is something, as a parent that can't be in two places at once, you would hate to have to think that you would have to tell your 7-year-old that you can't go out there with a fake gun, right? Because this is liable to happen. The reality is that you can't. That's the reality. And you want to love on them, intentionally, with the quality of love, so that they're not afraid, but they're just, they're conscious of what they can and can't do, unfortunately, due to the system that's not set up for Black people to be successful.
Wow.
I want to echo.
Go ahead, Max.
I want to echo some of what my brother Warren said a few moments ago, but probably frame it a little bit differently, and that is balance. You cannot do one without the other. They must be done simultaneously for the best. Because if you wait until it's too late, then there is a danger there. And Tamir Rice was just a prepubescent boy when he got killed. And so you cannot wait until you have to allow them to grow, yes, and allow for some discovery. And that speaks to the importance of fathers being there, because you have to provide that watchful eye, that caring presence, that love, that context where they can thrive, and at the same time expose them to the realities that they need to be exposed to, because whether at school or other places, you will not always be there. So you need to equip them to function in those spaces.
So I'm hearing the balance. The balance is key. Okay, so the ladies have been sitting on the edge of their seats because they want to hear what these brothers have to say. Why is it that even the most exceptional mom can't do the whole 9 yards as far as making that successful transition from boyhood to manhood? Kelvin, let's start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Ms. Clark. I appreciate it. There's a reason why the Creator gave us a mom and a dad. When we talk about balance, there are certain things, and I'm not sure how folks may believe, but I can only tell you from my belief and my own experience. There are certain things that a father needs to be able to teach a son. In the same way, there are certain things that a mother must teach her daughter in respect to who he is and who he will become as an adult male in the world, as who she will become as an adult woman in the world. And so I believe that my mother did the best that she could do, and she did a very good job. However, when you put me under the microscope, you will find that I have many deficiencies and had many deficiencies in my development from boyhood to manhood. And it wasn't until God intervened, and in my case, I was able to come under the teachings and the guidance of the Nation of Islam, I was able to come under the tutelage of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I was able to help coordinate the Million Man March. And so I literally had these intentional instructions given to me about manhood over and over and over again. And it helped to, if you will, balance my development and help to rectify those deficiencies. I believe that our sisters, if it were not for them, we would not be this far today. We take nothing away at all from motherhood, nothing. If it were not for mother, we would have nothing. However, in order for our rebalancing to be properly set in place, then the men have to step up and they have to take their rightful place in being able to raise these boys into manhood.
Okay. Warren and then Max.
The best way for me to describe why it's important for a man to raise a man is I will give my own personal story in reference to me. I've taken a lot of wrong turns in my life, going to jail, stealing cars, being part of a gang, doing drugs, selling drugs, you name it. So because I personally experienced that, and when I'm talking to a young man that's doing the same thing, there's an instant connection. Now I have to let them know that I'm telling you stuff that I didn't read in a book, that nobody told me, that I didn't see, you know what I'm saying, somewhere else. These are personal experiences. And when they're personal experiences, and me being a man and them being a young man, there is an easier way of digesting, right? Because you can't wholeheartedly speak from a man's point of view if you're a woman, just like a man can't wholeheartedly speak from a woman's point of view if you're a man. It's like a man trying to tell his daughter about her menstrual cycle, right? You don't know enough because you ain't never really experienced that. You only know it's that time of the month for the most part. Mm-hmm. But you know, when a woman is able to articulate, because they know how bad they feel during that time, to their daughter, they like, okay, mom, yeah, you get that. So it's less you can say less, and this is something that our young people say. You can say less when you're a man communicating to a man, just like you can say less when you're a woman communicating to your daughter, because it's kind of like you do get it, because you're actually experiencing the same thing.
Okay, great analogy, Max.
A woman cannot teach a young man, a boy, how to become a man, because men and women are wired differently. And so it's like, how can a hen teach a baby rooster how to be a rooster? That's not possible. You see in all of the other elements of life, in the animal kingdom, etc., male, female, we're wired differently. And so we're better able to interact and to communicate, like my brother said a few moments ago. A woman is not able to adequately deal with issues such as puberty and hormones in the male, and how to deal with members of the opposite sex. How many mothers have talked to their sons about sexuality? There's a natural discomfort there. Whereas a man talking to a man, it's a whole different conversation. And I was listening to a psychologist many years ago, and he was talking about this distinction, and one of the distinctions, and he was talking around the element of just talking. Mm-hmm. There's a difference in our voices. Mm-hmm. And a boy responds differently to a man's voice. In fact, his advice to single mothers was, when you're talking to your son, especially in a discipline, but in general, but but specifically also in a discipline situation, try to learn how to drop your voice so it becomes more male.
Wow.
Why?
Wow.
Because a male speaking to a male is a totally different thing than a woman speaking to a male. And so
I've actually seen that.
it's totally different. And so there are some things, I mean, you can imitate a man for a moment, but it will be a Herculean task to be trying to switch, and it's just not possible. Some women have done outstanding work, but if you talk to that young man, he will tell you about those areas of deficiency where he wished that he had a male figure talking to him about certain things. It's just how we're wired.
Yes.
You know, I cannot believe that time is our enemy right now. There's so much I want to ask. Kelvin, there's a phrase that you've told me so many times. Mothers love their...
mothers love their sons and raise their daughters.
What does that mean?
I was looking at the clock, so I want to make this very short, and I'll put it in generalities, if you will, Ms. Clark. You know, unfortunately, there is in many occasions where there is no father in the home, and mom is doing her best to raise these children, that she may have a sense of pity, a sense of shame, a sense that she needs to overprotect the male child, wherein she has the female child. The female child has a natural affinity and follows her in terms of her upbringing. And so the opportunity to raise the child in as far as her daughter is different than what unfortunately may be sympathy and or pity in some cases for the son. What we have seen play out, at least in my observation over the last 30 years, is that when the boys wind up going to school, and it usually starts around, well, by third grade, definitely, sometimes even earlier, and the behavior of our boys start to conflict with the conformities inside of school settings, systems can identify him as having problems. And the mother being at loss in terms of what's actually going on may buy into this theory that the system is providing, that he needs special education, he needs medication, and she buys into this thing. Well, yeah, I always knew something was wrong with him because his father. And so that relationship or lack thereof with the father now carries over into the son. And we have a situation where instead of raising him, we pity him. And that can be very dangerous.
Okay, so again, I really have to move on. I wanted to unpack that a little bit more, but time is against us. Boys don't cry. Warren, talk to me about that. Boys don't cry. Get up, pick up yourself. Boys don't cry. Talk to me about that.
I think it's funny that you say that. I think sometimes, and we can kind of like piggyback off of the last question, I think that mothers could, press that just as well as men. But I think mothers, in their attempt to, raise a young man, could say, stop that crying, right? This is what you're not supposed to do, and why? Because they want to succeed at raising a young man. And, I think we've fallen into the stereotypical saying that boys are not supposed to cry. When the reality is that as a human being with emotions and feelings, you need some form of outlet. Because when you're told that you can't cry, you cry internally. And while you're crying internally, you're building up a well of emotions and feelings that at some point are going to have to get out. And a lot of times when they get out, they get out at the worst at the worst time, where you're in a situation that could have been prevented had you been told it's okay to show your feelings. It's not making you crying, it's not making you less than a man. But once you fill up, with all that, anger and all that hurt and all that emotion, because you've been told that you can't cry, or you got to cry secretly, that creates a bad situation.
Wow. And Vicky, I want to take a moment to validate and expand just a little bit on what Warren just said. Crying is an emotion, and we're all emotional beings. And because and this is something that I'm in the process of learning. And one of the things that I say, don't wait. Our boys don't need to wait until they get to 40, 50, 60 years old to learn certain things if they can learn it now. So crying is an emotion. We are all emotional beings. And if you check yourself, our first reaction, whether male or female, to our first reaction to external stimuli is essentially emotional first, because that stimuli, before it reaches the brain, passes through the limbic system, which is where our emotions are. And my brother said something just now, the failure to cry and telling the boy not to cry, when it will eventually turn to anger and get manifested in the worst possible ways. So, let him cry. I had to learn how to cry and to do it in public rather than to keep hiding it because men are not supposed to cry. That's a lie.
Wow. Kelvin, you have 30 seconds to respond to that. And then I'm going to have to ask each of you to take a minute to talk to our mothers, to talk to your brothers, other fathers. What is the message that has worked for you in raising your sons, or maybe hasn't worked, that you would want them to walk away with? Kelvin, go ahead. You're muted.
Pardon me, just very quickly, Ms. Vicky, regarding this last part about boys crying, there has to be work that is done inside of the home, as well as work that has to be done outside in the community, because and I say this with transparency. If you were in my neighborhood and your mother had taught you to cry, you may have been victimized. You out there being sensitive and crying, I tell you, and again, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's an actual fact. And what I see with our little boys today, that norm, if you will, that cultural norm, and it is not at all that I'm saying is correct, but it is a reality that sensitive boys will be victimized. Wow. And so we have to find that balance, as Brother Maxwell said earlier. We have to find that and create that new environment.
Okay, do you want to start by the message? What has worked for you in raising your sons? And now you have grandsons. What has worked? What's the message for other fathers and mothers?
Again, very quickly, Ms. Clark, and this is from my heart. It is a message that I've been using with my students, and I'm really trying to reiterate it with those who carry my bloodline. As a father and as the father figure, as the authority figure in my home, I want them to know, and I would say this to any of my brothers and also to my mothers, this statement helps. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, and I'm probably going to be wrong again. I am not perfect. I am not even striving to be perfect. I'm striving to be the best individual that I can be so that you can learn from my mistakes. Communication is extremely important. It is not going to be easy. As fathers, we should put our seatbelts on. And I think we probably, as we have NA groups and AA groups, we need to have more fatherhood groups. I'll stop right there, Ms. Clark. Thank you very much.
Great. Warren, and then Max, you have the last say. The message that you want fathers, other fathers, and mothers to walk away with as a result of this conversation tonight.
Well, I think I would say action speaks louder than words. I would say we have to lead by an example and make sure our kids understand that there is no love without sacrifice. And what that means is I intentionally bring my younger sons to group with me, and they have heard me say boldly with confidence that I am willing to leave them fatherless in an attempt to save some of the other young men who do not have a father. And I had to explain that to them because, of course, they looked at me like, what do you mean you would leave us fatherless? So I had to explain to them that if a grown man seen one of them running into the street, I would expect that grown man to risk his life to try and save you. So I had to explain to them that I could not, expect somebody to do something that I am not willing to do myself. And I'll leave that there.
Okay. Max, you have 1 minute.
To the mothers, don't deny your sons a relationship with their father because you can fill in the blanks. To fathers, I would say, never stop learning how to be a father. Stay involved. Tell your son that you love him at every opportunity you have. Be forgiving. And the last one, but very important, learn to ask for forgiveness. I have gone to my sons and asked them to forgive me for the times when I messed up.
Yeah. Very good.
Ask for forgiveness.
Very good.
A real man will do that.
A real man. Okay, so I just thank you, Brother Calvin, Max, Warren. I tried to do the impossible, fit a topic like this in an hour. But I think that I just thank you all for sharing, for being transparent. This has been a rich topic. I'm hoping that you've learned, for those of you who are listening, admit that you're not perfect. Ask for forgiveness when you make mistakes. Show the balance between love and firmness. It is a global village out there. Lead by example. Keep on learning. Stay involved. These are all wonderful takeaways. Again, I thank my brothers, Warren, Brother Lovejoy, Max, so much for this rich conversation. I think we're going to have to do it again because there was so much that we wanted to just really dive into that we just weren't able to. Thank you so much. And Pastor Williams, I'll turn it over to you.
I see the pain that you feel deep inside. I see the hurt and the tears that you can no longer hide. But I'm preparing you for greater things in which you cannot see. I just need you to put your faith in me. I see your hope has been lost in so heavy, and you can no longer bear. But I am strengthening you in your troubled times with blessings seen and unseen. And I need you to put your trust in me, 'cause I'm not done. Don't give up now. I keep my word. I'm not finished with you yet. Not yet. I'm not done. And I'm not through. I'm not finished. And even if you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, fear no evil, for I am with you. My rod and my staff will comfort you. Oh, my child, believe me when I say I'm not done with you yet. Depression on the inside, but God is saying, eviction notice on the door, but God is saying, oh, not yet. Doctor says you got 6 months to live, but God says, and someone's thinking suicide in here, but God says, oh, not yet. So hold on. God said, He'll work it out for you. Hold on. You gotta push your way through. Hey, He will come through. Hold on. I'm not through. My child, I'm not finished. He said I would make it. I'll let go. He's got it. I will not forget it. He's not finished with me yet. He's the God of a second chance. So let go. He's got your whole world in His hands. He's not finished. Hey! 'Cause He said, oh, I'll let go 'cause He's got it. Oh, I can't forget what He's done for me. Thank you, Jesus. He's not finished with me yet.